So we're continuing from verse 23, chapter 17. And as we know, this section, 13 to this last section of Bhagavad Gita, is more about knowledge. And we notice that in this chapter specifically, Krishna has not talked about himself. There's no mam, right? There's no mam word being used here. There's no talk of bhakti directly here, at least till now. And it's mostly about people who follow some sort of dharma, non-scriptural dharma, or probably scriptural also, and that can be in the three modes: sattvic, tamasic, and rajasic. Right? So what Krishna is doing is he's answering Arjun's question that yah shastra vidimursaja yartate kama karta yah shastra vidimursaja jajante shraddhanvita tesham nishtha tu ka Krishna sattvam rajastha. He asks that people who have some sort of faith, what happens to those people? That's the question that Arjun is putting forward. So that what happens to those people? Because in the last chapter, Krishna has mentioned that the extremes are divine and demoniac people. But then here, Krishna is going to go into the details. Okay, who are the people who have some faith, some sort of faith, right? So that's what is being talked about in this chapter. Okay. So, and then now coming here, what we have written now, Krishna has mentioned all the different, 4 different things actually. Ahar, Yagya, Dana, and Tapa. That he's talked about these 4 things in the 3 different modes. So now, what Krishna is going to do is he's going to tell us how, because right now all these things, they are in some of the modes. They are too much in the material world. So Krishna will be saying that therefore auspiciousness is needed. So from that point of view, if you are still struggling with the modes, then we need auspiciousness in there. We need to bring in something transcendental to it. So what Krishna is going to ask us is recite Om Tat Sat, right? So that's the verse he's going to give us. Om Tat Sat is the three letters to 3 words to his compound word, right? So faith can be, it can be either in scriptures or non-scriptures, and then some people have transcendental faith. So devotees are transcendental faith. They are okay with, like Prabhupada. He was ready to do anything to push forth this bhakti. Whereas some scriptural faith would say, oh, sannyasi cannot do, like marriage ceremonies and so forth. But Prabhupada was transcendental, so he could do that. So his faith was transcendental. But then on the lower end, there can be people who don't have transcendental. They have some have scriptural, some have non-scriptural, and then people are completely, who have uh, who are just saying that, oh, all this is random. There is no faith, right? So in this chapter, Krishna has also taught us that how people in goodness worship devtas, passionately some people worship yakshas, rakshasas, pretas, so forth. So that's why Krishna is bringing in this transcendental aspect to it now. So this Om Tat Sat can elevate one from non-scriptural faith to scriptural faith and then to transcendental faith. So it's a series. And there are these following verses. There are not a lot of verses left, so we might not take a long time today. But there are these verses 23 to 28. That's what we're left with in this chapter. So the first one that we come to, before I move forward, any thoughts or any comments, any questions before we move forward? Anything we have discussed so far? Nothing? Okay. We can move forward. So Krishna is now starting to say, Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho, Brahmanas Trividha Smrita, Brahmanas Tena Vedascha, Yagyascha Vihitapura. Right? So Yagyascha Vihitapura. And what it means is, from the beginning of creation, the 3 words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. These 3 symbolic representations were used by Brahmanas while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Right, so there are three words that now Krishna is mentioning. Om Tat Sat. So all that yagya, dana, tapa, ahar, they're being repeated again here also. Krishna is saying this. Yagyascha Vihitapura. So he's talking about yagya and all those things have been brought out here also. So they become all these yagya, they become stable and meaningful, and they bear the desired fruit only when they are associated with Krishna, Sat, the pure existence. Right? So all these activities that we perform for the sake of fulfilling yagya, dana, and tapa, anything that we do for welfare of ourselves, welfare of others, for fulfillment of our spiritual aspirations, they all come under Sat, goodness. Right? So Om Tat Sat Nirdesho. Nirdesho means it's known or pointed to. So absolute is known by these three words, which is Om Tat Sat. So now in this word, there are two. So there is Brahmanas and Brahmanas. So this is Brahman. So Brahman is and Brahmana. Brahmanas are those self-realized souls that are being talked about. And the word Brahman, they both are similar words, but they're different meanings. Right? So Brahman is Krishna in one. In it, we have the three forms, right? Brahman, Padatma, Bhagavan. So the Brahman is Krishna. So and then these three words, Om Tat Sat, they are used to describe Brahman. Right? And then the Brahman that is being used here, as Prabhupada is translating, is Brahmana, the Brahmanas. So and then yes, so there's saintly people, right? And the word Brahman, Prabhupada is translated as a supreme absolute truth. So the similar sounding words but different meanings. And then there's a word Pura, Vihita Pura, Yagyasya Vihita, formerly. So Prabhupada translates from the beginning of creation. So from time immemorial, people have been using this, holy sages have been using this Om Tat Sat phrase to invoke the absolute truth. So it's being used to invoke the absolute truth. So the purpose of this section, this last section of this chapter, is that how people can connect to the absolute truth. So people are doing worship in different modes and faith, right? So, but then how can we connect it to Krishna? So Om is the vital force, right? We read in the 7th chapter, Pranava Sarva Vedeshu Sabdhake Paurusham. Pranava. So that's Krishna himself saying, I am Om, right? So Om is the vital force. So Om as the vital force is the key element, Tat, in all existent, Sat. It implies that God is the breath of life force itself, and that this life force is all pervading the entire creation. That's the way to understand. So we have read about the concept of Om, right? In the earlier classes. So Om, Krishna says this in the 10th chapter also, that he is Om. So Om is his representation. Krishna's representation. It's a non-personal representation. Whereas the word Krishna is a very personal form. Right? Just like we all have a personal and impersonal form, right? Uh, there can be like I have a name, right? So when my close friends call me by a name, but then when I'm at work, I probably addressed as a more a more designation and that kind of thing. So it becomes so there we have two different kinds of names. So similarly, Om is Krishna's kind of non-personal name. It's a generic name. But then the word Krishna itself is a very close name for him. And we talked about the concept of Om in one of our was the 7th chapter? Yes, 7th. So there was uh, so we discussed this. So I'm not going to go into details from that, but yeah. So actually, we can read one verse. Just give me 1 second. Let me show you which verse. Which verse is that? There's a one verse where Prabhupada gives a good description of this Om and This is 9th canto, chapter 14, verse number 48. And here it's saying in the Satyuga, the first millennium, all the Vedic mantras were included in one mantra, Pranava, the root of all Vedic mantras. So and Krishna himself has told us, Pranava Sarva Vedeshu Sabdakhe Paurusham, that of all the Vedas, I am Pranava, I am Om. So in other words, the Atharva Veda alone was the source of all Vedic knowledge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan was the only worshipable deity. There was no recommendation for worship of the demigods. Fire was one only and only order of life in the human society was known as Hamsa. Let's read the purport. Somebody would like to read the purport? This is a good one for Om Tat Sat and Hare Krishna mantra. Prabhupada explains that.
I can read that, Prabhu.
Okay, please go ahead.
In Satyuga, there was only one Veda, not four. Later, because before the beginning of Kali Yuga, this one Veda, the Athar Veda, or some Veda, the Yajur Veda, was divided into four: Sam, Yajur, Rig, and Athar, for the facility of human society. In Satya Yuga, the only mantra was Omkara, Om Tat Sat. The same name Omkara is manifest in the mantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Unless one is Brahmana, one cannot utter Omkara and get the desired result. But in Kali Yuga, almost everyone is a Shudra, unfit for pronouncing the Pranav Omkara. Therefore, the Shastras have recommended the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Omkara is a mantra or Mahamantra, and Hare Krishna is also a Mahamantra. The purpose of pronouncing Omkara is to address the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And the purpose of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the same. Hare, O energy of the Lord. Krishna, O Lord Krishna. Hare, O energy of the Lord. Rama, O Supreme Lord, O Supreme Enjoyer. The only worshipable Lord is Hare, who is the goal of the Vedas. Vedas cha sarveya aham eva vedaya. By worshipping the demigods, one worships the different parts of the Lord. Just as one might water the branches and the twigs of a tree. But worshipping Narayana, the all-inclusive Supreme Personality of Godhead, is like pouring water on the roots of the tree, thus supplying water to the trunk, branches, twig, leaf, and so on. In Satyuga, people knew how to fulfill the necessities of life simply by worshipping Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The same purpose can be served in the age of Kali by the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra as recommended in the Bhagavatam. Kirtanyat eva Krishnaya mukta sangha param vijate. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one becomes free from the bondage of material existence and thus become eligible to return home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Yes, so Prabhupada is telling us here that in Satyuga, Omkar was the only mantra. And if you notice that, Prabhupada has said Omkar and Om Tat Sat is the same thing. Prabhupada is putting that in the bracket. So Omkar, and then the same name Omkar is manifest in the mantra. Okay. And Prabhupada then gives this, there might be some restrictions with the Omkar concept, right? So unless one is a Brahman, one cannot utter Omkar. But in Kali Yuga, we have a special this benefit in Kali Yuga because it's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, and we are very, how do you say that, weak-minded. What are the qualities? We are weak, we are unlucky, we are short. Yeah. Prayana lampayush kalo asmin yuge jana manda sumanda matyo manda bhagya upadrisha. Those are the qualities of us. So we all are Shudras. And the reason we are Shudras, because we don't go through all the proper rituals. In early days, there would be sanskaras at every point when a child was to be brought into this world. There would be proper sanskara before a man and woman would get together, and then there would be when a mother would get pregnant, and then when the child was born, and so, there are so many different sanskaras, but there is no sanskara now. So Kali Yuga, everybody is Shudras, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. But then, so therefore, we have been given this special privilege that we can just be successful by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So the purpose of Omkar is to address Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. And the purpose of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra is the same here. That about Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So so they both are same. And as I mentioned, in the Satyuga, it was okay because people were pure to that level that, it's okay because they know what exactly Omkar means. But nowadays, when people chant Omkar, they don't connect it to Krishna. They don't realize that Omkar is Krishna himself. So that's why they don't get the benefit of. That's why the Shastras have even made it very simple for us. That now you just chant Hare Krishna mantra, now you directly connect with Krishna, right? So that's a way to understand what this Omkar is. So Om Tat Sat Iti Nirdesho Brahmanas Trivida Smrata Brahmanas Tena Vedascha Yajnasya Vitapra. So that's what Krishna is saying, that using these three words can spiritualize everything that you are doing. Because as I was saying, Kalim Sabhajanti Arya Gunagya Sara Bhagina Yatra Sankirtane Naiva Sarva Swartho Bilabhyate. That people who are born in this Kali Yuga, instead of cursing that, oh, I'm born in Kali Yuga, people who are knowledgeable, they actually appreciate being born in Kali Yuga. Why? Because they know that just by being born in Kali Yuga, you can easily achieve perfection by Sankirtan. Right? So that's the beauty of this. So Krishna talked about all the different modes, okay, goodness, passion, ignorance, so on and so forth. But he says if you bring Krishna into it, and he's giving a more generic version because this section is not about bhakti, he's making it more generic. But he's saying if you just bring Om Tat Sat into all these activities that you're doing, that immediately makes it perfect. That makes it transcendental. Or at least puts you on that. At least puts you on that path. Right? So Krishna is explaining how things work in spiritual life. Right? And as I mentioned, materialistic, non-scriptural faith, scriptural faith, transcendental faith. So anybody in whichever phase he is, if he brings Krishna, this Vedic invocation of Om Tat Sat, then he can kind of progress on the path of being transcendental. So Om is related to God, with God. That's what it is. And the word Tat means Tattvam Asi. And as the Mayavadis say, Tattvam Asi means you are he, and you will become Krishna. But no, actually the meaning is you are his. Tattvam Asi, you are Krishna's, right? And Sat refers to eternal, right? So it's the eternal underlying cause of everything, right? So in one sense, through this, Krishna is talking about chanting of the holy name for spiritual advancement. But there's that the potency of the chanting is to elevate somebody who has faith in something, mode of ignorance or faith, to all the way up to being transcendental. So spiritual advancement through chanting. So that's a very inclusive understanding of bhakti. And Prabhupada was there a comment or question, son? Okay. And so Prabhupada was, in this sense, Prabhupada was, he had a very clear and a practical understanding. Once, Prabhupada was in Iran, and he was discussing something with the disciples, and the namaz was being sounded in the back. And then Srila Prabhupada stopped speaking, and he closed his eyes, went into some sort of deep meditation, as if he was hearing the namaz. Okay? And when Srila Prabhupada opened his eyes were bright. And Srila Prabhupada asked that, wasn't that beautiful? And devotees were taken aback. Oh, what is Prabhupada doing here? And then one of the devotees said, Prabhupada, wouldn't it have been better if they were chanting Hare Krishna? And Prabhupada looked a bit hurt. He says, what do you mean? Why are you making me sectarian? They are glorifying God in their own way, and we are glorifying God in our own way. So, as long as the principle of glorification of God is there, that principle has to be, that you should focus on that principle, right? It can be different people, different for different people, but as long as we bring God into the picture, everything becomes purified, right? So, but unfortunately, in today's world, many different traditions have very exclusivist mentality, that either my way or you're going to go to hell. But Prabhupada was not that way. When Krishna says, Sadharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja, Krishna also includes his representatives in that, right? That you can surrender to his representatives also. And Prabhupada in the first canto, there is a verse in the purport. Prabhupada says that you get the same benefit by connecting to a pure devotee as you get by connecting to Krishna. So Prabhupada has said that. So in some other traditions, they say, oh, you can only go to God through me and so forth. But then in Bhagavad Gita is like Sarvadharman Parityaja. It's not like it's not an exclusive mentality when we talk of Sarvadharman Parityaja. It's very much like a patient who's been going to many doctors, and he's been kind of getting treatment from different doctors, right? So one doctor says something, the other doctor says something else, and then when the current doctor where this person is, he will have to force it on this person that, hey, you forget everything and you follow what I'm telling you. Now, this does not necessarily mean that all the other doctors are false, but the statement is to meant to create focus. And Prabhupada had that same focus. As Prabhupada encouraged people to take up God consciousness, whichever path one follows. Other religions also, they also focus, they read scriptures, right? So once Prabhupada, early on in the movement, Prabhupada was giving an interview there was this called Lake Crane show. There was a Lake Crane show that used to come, and the host was very famous for trying to incite his guests to provoke them. And so then that person had called a Christian priest, and he had called Prabhupada. And so he very bluntly asked, so Prabhupada, are you saying that only by chanting Hare Krishna you can go back home, back to Godhead? Prabhupada said, no. He says, whichever faith, if you follow sincerely, and it clearly tells you who's God, then that faith can take you back home. And then the host asked the same question to the Christian priest. And he was a bit flustered. He said, oh, what am I going to? He said, no, only through Christ can you go back home, back to Godhead. So Prabhupada was never that sectarian. Right? So understanding that, yeah, we know that Krishna is supreme. We chant his name. But then there can be other things that you can bring in to purify your life. And that way we become more, our intelligence expands, and we understand that, okay, it's not just me. It's not like we Gaudiya Vaishnavas are the only ones who are going to go back to Godhead. There can be other people also. Even Christians, there are very devout people who follow the process of bhakti. Right? So there can be other, invocations that can be brought. And more importantly, it's not just a matter of uttering, but it's also a matter of understanding the purpose, that we are trying to connect with the absolute truth. So not trying to get entangled in too many technical how should I recite it, and this is the right word to recite. But it's the focus is more on the essential principle and emotions associated with it. Whatever we are doing, we have to connect it with the absolute. Yad karoshi yad ashnashi, yad juhoshi dadashi yad tapasyasi konteya, kurushva madarpanam. The 9th chapter, Krishna says this, 27th verse. Whatever you do it for me. So, but here the only difference is that Krishna is talking about himself in generic terms. Om Tat Sat. Okay. If you might have noticed, let me confirm this. I think when Prabhupada started writing the Bhagavatam, was it the preface? I think it was preface. In the end of the preface, Prabhupada ends with Om Tat Sat. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, let me show you. This is the preface to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And here Prabhupada ends with Om Tat Sat. So you can see that. So Prabhupada also used to, and I've seen many senior devotees use this phrase, Om Tat Sat, because it represents Krishna. Okay, says Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat. Is it clear to everybody, Om Tat Sat, what it means? What is the purpose? Why Krishna is bringing it in here? It's clear because we need to be clear on this, because the other following verses are based on this concept and this invocation of Om Tat Sat.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
The verse that we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Canto 9.
Okay.
So yeah. That it says, right? Om Tat Sat or Omkara, obviously both are the same, and they are also like Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna mantra, right? So, so Prabhuji, we obviously we follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we on our beats we say Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, right? So can we just say Om Tat Sat? Because in that verse it says both are Maha Mantra. So instead of doing 16 rounds of Hare Krishna on my beats, can I do Om Tat Sat?
The reason Prabhupada explains this is, so in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada gives this distinction that, hey, no, Omkara is not equivalent to the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So
In
what happens in Chaitanya Charitamrita? Not
which
here.
Adi Leela Prabhuji, where it is?
I can go back, I can check and I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
But the reason is that what Prabhupada is doing is that Prabhupada knows that how each literature that he's presenting will be read. Bhagavad Gita, nearly whoever gets it will read it. Bhagavatam is the next level, but Chaitanya Charitamrita is the top level. So Prabhupada was very conscious as to who's reading my book, who's going to be reading it, what kind of a mentality that person might have. So just like Krishna doesn't want anybody to leave from his purview, or like the house Krishna has built, he wants everybody to live in that, right? I give that analogy that if you can't stay in the main chamber of the house, stay in the backyard, or probably but don't leave the house. Similarly, Prabhupada, in some places you will notice that when you go to these more esoteric scriptures like Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada becomes more and more clear, because he would know that somebody who's reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita is surely a pious person. He's surely religious. He will understand the distinction between this. But if somebody who's reading the Bhagavad Gita or even Srimad Bhagavatam, if somebody reading it and they find this out, okay, oh my God, Prabhupada is saying this, they might they might say that, oh no, okay, all the people who are doing Omkara, they are useless. So Prabhupada didn't want people to feel that way, that he knew what kind of a mentality they would have when they're reading the books. So accordingly, he presents the same concept in a way that, according to the person who's reading it, can appreciate it. If here he would have said that Omkara is lower than that, then there are people in other sections of the society, other sects, who have read the Bhagavatam, and they will say, oh my God, so you're saying the word Pranava, which Krishna himself uses in Bhagavatam, is lower. You're yourself contradicting yourself, that, oh my God, you're on one hand you say you are a follower of Krishna, and then Krishna is saying Pranava is Om, and then you're saying no, Om is not good, Krishna is good. So it seems a bit contradictory. So Prabhupada was very careful about how he presented everything. Can you all still hear me? It says my internet connection is not stable.
Yeah, we lost you for a moment, but now you're back.
I'm back. Okay. Yes. So the word Pranava used specifically in this verse was also used by Krishna in the seventh chapter. Pranava Sarva Vedeshu Shabdake. So I am Pranava. And so that equality has been put forth by Krishna, that I am Omkara. So it's me. So Krishna himself is saying it's the same thing. But a pure devotee can understand that Omkara, even though it's the same, but it's more of an impersonal thing. It's not a personal feature of Krishna. It doesn't have Krishna's name in it. So if a person with a very low mentality, or a not that high elevated mentality, will chant Om, he will not have the same thought as Krishna. So Prabhupada said, okay, let it be. It's all the same. It's all the same. That's why Prabhupada is saying it's all the same. So when somebody, even when they chant Omkar, they are okay with, they will still think of Krishna. But when he comes to Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a very esoteric literature, he says, no, Krishna is supreme. The Om is not that personal. So we don't chant Omkar. So you have to understand how Prabhupada presents it in different literatures. That's the reason that we means, when I say we devotees, when we look at it with that understanding that, yes, I know Krishna and Omkara, they're same, but I also know Krishna is a personal feature, and I want to connect with that personal feature, so I'll chant Hare Krishna. That mindset has to be there, Mati.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Makes sense. And I'm remembering one of the lecture I was hearing, Prabhuji. In that it said that from Omkara, is the transcendental sound from which everything originates, and Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the transcendental sound from which we wrap up this word, and go back to home, back to Godhead.
Okay. That's new. I haven't heard that. So I'm not sure. I'll have to think about it. Yeah, if I don't know if it was a ISKCON devotee, I'm sure they must have
Yes,
backed it
it's
up with some.
it's Radhesham Prabhuji Prabhu.
Okay,
And
then if he's saying it, then yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but I personally not read it anyway, but I'm sure he's highly elevated soul, so he would know it better than me. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. That creation, and then for us to leave this world, Hare Krishna Mahamantra helps us.
thank you.
But yeah, you have to understand. We have to understand that how Prabhupada presents different things in places. The reason being that he knows who's going to read his books. For example, if you see the Bhagavad Gita, in every verse Prabhupada brings in Krishna consciousness. So many people criticized him that, oh, you calling this book as it is, but you are bringing bhakti in verses. There is no bhakti. So Prabhupada would very clearly answer them that I have to do it because you have removed Krishna from where he is present. That you are presenting Bhagavad Gita without Krishna. So I have to completely go opposite and present Krishna in every verse. So Prabhupada was very smart in the way how people are going to read his books, how are they going to approach the books. So he made it very, very, understandable for people who are reading it.
Got it. And Prabhuji, what exactly, I know in the opening statement you said, right, moving from the non-scripture faith to the scripture faith to the transcendental faith. What exactly, I know it may be sounding very silly question, but what exactly you mean by transcendental faith?
So,
faith in scripture I understood, faith in the personal form, Krishna I understood, but what do you mean by transcendental faith?
Yeah, so transcendental faith is what Mahaprabhu said, right? What did he say in his Shikshastakam? That whether you hurt me or you leave me, I'll still love you, Krishna. So a person who has scriptural faiths, what is his thought or his or her thought? That scriptures say you do these rituals, this is the benefit you will get. So there is still some mentality of getting something in return. So that's scriptural faith. It's good. It's in a mode of goodness. At least that person is following the scriptures. That like, for example, even when many, in ISKCON also we have so many yagyas that we do to please the deities, and so it's okay. But transcendental faith means that Krishna, whatever you do with me, whether you put me in hell, whether you put me in heaven, I am okay. I'll still love you. I'll have full faith on you. So that's transcendental faith, where there is no tinge of desire to get anything back from Krishna. So that becomes transcendental faith, right? So that's the difference between both of them.
Got it, Prabhu. Now it's clear. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
You're welcome. Okay, so yes, 1723, Om Tat Sat Iti Nirdesho. So let's go to the next verse. Let's see what Prabhupada. Prabhupada explains this. This is a good thing. So he's explaining where these verses are taken from. So let's read this quickly. Whenever a Vedic hymn or the holy name of the Supreme Lord is uttered, Om is added. Like that we always say, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadhyasya. The first verse of Bhagavatam starts with Om. So this is an indication of Vedic literature. These three words are taken from Vedic hymns. Om iti etad brahmano nedishtham nama Rigveda indicates the first goal. So Krishna is the first Om. Then Tat Tvam Asi, Chandogya Upanishad, indicates the second goal. And Sadeva Saumya indicates the third goal. Combined, they become Om Tat Sat. And let's see if Prabhupada explains this. Yeah. Okay, so Prabhupada is telling us that where these three are coming from. And then Prabhupada says, when one performs penance, charity, and sacrifice with these three words, he's acting in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is a scientific execution of transcendental activities, which enables one to return home back to Godhead. There is no loss of energy in acting in such a transcendental way. This is a very important thing Prabhupada is putting. It's a scientific execution. Right? It's nothing. It's not like high up in the air that okay, fancy words but nothing to practice. No, I was listening to I was talking to some people recently, and so some people of them, they follow Swadhyay, some people follow the BAPS philosophy. And and I was appreciating what Prabhupada has given us, because it's only in ISKCON that we get the philosophy in such a practical way that we can take home and practice it. Everybody's teaching about Krishna. All are good. I'm not saying anybody's bad. But the practice is missing. And practice is, if there is no practice, wisdom does not come in. So practice plus knowledge converts to wisdom. That's the beauty of ISKCON, what Prabhupada has given us. If you look at us from a material perspective, ISKCON is we're not a very rich organization. We are not highly organized, everything. But then what we have is what nobody else has, is the way practically Prabhupada has given us this philosophy that we can use it, right? 4 regulative principles, chanting, everything has been really given to us. That's why it's a scientific execution. So Krishna consciousness is a scientific execution. And if you remember in the first verse of the first chapter, Dhritarashtra was speaking. I'll quickly show you it was very good. If you all remember it, the first verse, Prabhupada tells us, how do you read Bhagavad Gita? He said it's a theistic science. He also said it's a science. It has to be read very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee, and try to understand it without personal motivated interpretations. So Prabhupada is asking us to read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly, because it's a science. Just like in science, we have a hypothesis, we do an experiment, and we get a result. Similarly, in this process, what Prabhupada has given us, we have a hypothesis that you'll become happy, you'll get unalloyed happiness if you practice these principles. And we all come home with a bead, come with a Bhagavad Gita, and we start reading it, start chanting. And then we see that happiness coming into our lives. So that's the experiment done and the result. That's why it's science. So that's the beauty of this process, what Prabhupada has given us. And I don't know how did I come to that, but yeah. So, oh yes, you're reading this part. Yes, so that's it. So that's what Prabhupada is saying. That is why when we perform any of these activities, penance, charity, sacrifice, when we bring Krishna into it, it becomes very scientific. That I'm not just doing penance for the sake of penance. I have an intention behind it. I have a reason behind it why I should do it. So that makes it a transcendental activity. Okay, so now Krishna in 24, 25, 26, and 27, he'll talk about the 3 aspects: Om, Tat, and Om Tat Sat. So this one is about Om. Therefore, transcendentalists undertaking performance of sacrifice, charity, and penance in accordance with scriptural regulations begin always with Om to attain the Supreme. Right? So they always begin with Om. So here Krishna is using the word, where is that? Brahmavadinam. So this is the only mention of the word Brahmavadi. If you remember, we talked about who are Brahmavadis and Mayavadis when we were having the discussion long time back. The Brahmavadis, so they are also impersonalists, but they are not impersonalists, blind impersonalists. They just don't know about Krishna. They don't know about the personal form of God. And we have examples of Sukadev Goswami, who the moment he came out of his mother's womb, he wanted to leave. He left. He said his father was running after him. Right? Yam pravajantum anupeta peta krityam dvaipayano viraha katu rajihara. There's a verse in the first canto, 2nd chapter, which it's demonstrated how Vyasa is running after him. Putreti tanmayataya tarvor abhinetus. Tarvor means only, so he was trying, please come back, at least take the Brahmanical thread, at least, so do some rituals. So Vyasadeva was running after him. But he just ran off. Yeah, no, I don't want anything to do. You'll get me entrapped in my material words. So he was a Brahmavadi. But then when he goes to the forest and he started living there, Vyasadeva sends some of his disciples there. And what do? They are reciting verses about Krishna. Right? So they recite, what's that? What verse is that? Forgetting that verse. Kamva dayalum sharanam vraje. I forgot that. Oh my God, that's a very good verse actually. Anybody remembers where Putana was being glorified, or Krishna was being glorified for giving the level of a mother to Putana? Anybody remembers that verse? Okay, I can't remember it right now. For some reason, I'm forgetting it. And I'm looking up as I speak. So probably. Okay, but okay. The reason I brought that up is because when he went to the forest, they started glorifying him, they started speaking verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, where Putana, Krishna was giving Putana the level of a mother, and it comes in the third canto. I don't know. I can't find it. So then he realizes, oh, who is this person who's giving the level of a witch, a level of a mother? Then he understands the personal form of Krishna. So that's the so that was an example of somebody who's a Brahmavadi. And then we have the four Kumaras also who are Brahmavadis, and they go to Vaikuntha, and when they smell the tulsi coming out of the lotus feet of Vishnu, they're immediately changed. Their heart was changed. Right? So their heart was changed, and they become personless, and they realize that this is a personal form. So this is the only place where the where the phrase Brahmavadi is used in the entire Bhagavad Gita. So I just wanted to highlight that part. We should know that if somebody asks you, where's that word Brahmavadi coming from? So yes, okay. So this is, yes, please.
Yeah, sorry to bother you, Prabhu. What was that you said was coming out of Vishnu Bhagwan? You said Ganga?
No. The smell of tulsi leaves on his lotus feet.
Oh, okay.
Tulsi Makaranda Vayu. Then it's a very beautiful verse where it says that Lord Vishnu is coming towards the Kumaras, and before they see Vishnu, they're able to smell the fragrance of tulsi and chandan coming from the lotus feet of Vishnu, and that itself just changes them.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, you're welcome. So yes, so those are Brahmavadis. So oh yes, the verse was Aho Bakiyam Stanakal Kutam Jigham Sayat Avyayam Apiyasadri Lebhe Gatim Dhatri Uchitam Tatovyam Kamva Dayalum Sharanam Vrajema. It's a very good verse. It's in third canto. It's if you read, it's a beautiful verse that who would want to pray to somebody else other than Krishna, who gave the role of a mother to a witch who came to kill him. So Putana in the Goloka, Putana is she helps Mother Yashoda. So just imagine how merciful Krishna is. So you all are in for a treat when you go back. Okay, so this is the only place Brahmavadis mean. But then here specifically, Brahmavadi is being used as a very generic term. Prabhupada is translating it as transcendentalist. So they are called Brahmavadi. Right? General person who follows Vedic culture. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Right? So they're saying, Krishna is saying, scriptural regulations begin always with Om to attain the supreme. So Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it invokes the absolute truth in a very personal way, as I was saying. Om invokes it in a non-personal way, right? As I was saying, right, you can call the Prime Minister, like in India, I've heard some people call Narendra Modi as Naru Bhai and so forth, but calling him as a Prime Minister is a bit impersonal. Right? So it's a level of intimacy that's different. So yes, so whenever you're reciting Om, we remember as Bhakti Yogis, we remember the meaning of it. So whenever Yajna Dana Tapa are performed, the Brahmavadis, they chant Om. And Vidhanokta, the word here is Vidhan Ukta, according to Vidhan, according to scriptural regulations. And so those who are following this broad Vedic culture for ultimate elevation to transcendence. And so that's why Prabhupada is using a verse here. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Surayo Chakshusha. I forgot about. So what the verse it means that just as the sun rays in the sky are extended to our vision, right? We can see the sun rays coming to us. Similarly, people who are wise and learned devotees, they're always seeing the supreme abode of Krishna. So their eyes are always towards that, towards Krishna. So that's why Prabhupada uses Om Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada. Pashyanti Suryo. So yeah, so they use the word Om. And then Prabhupada says the performance of everything on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead assures the perfection of all activities. So when we say Vish Om, with the thought in mind that Om is representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that makes our process perfect. When we chant the mantra for Guru, Om Agyanati Mirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakya. So there's always this concept of Om there. Right? And then in the we should always do whatever activity we are doing, thinking that this is for the pleasure of the Lord. That's the message here. And where's that? Just give me 1 second. There's another verse that I thought of which I can show you. This is a very good one. It comes in the 11th canto. So 35, 36. Yes, it's share it. 11 through 36. So what this verse says is that in accordance with the particular nature one has acquired in conditioned life, whatever one does with body, words, mind, senses, intelligence, or purified consciousness, one should offer to the Supreme. This is thinking this is for the pleasure of Lord Narayan. Narayaneti samarpayet tat. So Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur has commented in this regard that a person who engages all the sensory activities of his body, mind, words, intelligence, ego, and consciousness in the service of the Supreme Lord cannot be considered to be on the same level as a karmi, working for his personal sense gratification. Although apparently still a conditioned soul, one who offers the fruits of all his activities to the Lord can no longer be touched by the countless miseries that arise from the reactions of this materialistic world, materialistic activities. Those are beautiful. So, Prabhupada, this is not Prabhupada, this is Prabhupada's disciples, but they're confirming that just by bringing in Krishna, we are no more at the level of karmis. We are moved beyond that level. Because of enmity against the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his omnipotent authority, the conditioned living entity performs activities against the order of the Lord. Yet, self-realized souls continue to perform all types of work within this world to carry out the mission of the Supreme Lord. According to Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, those karmis who are sufficiently pious follow the example of the self-realized souls by trying to offer the fruits of their own duties at the lotus feet of the Lord. Although this is counted as karma mishra bhakti, or devotional service mixed with a desire to execute fruitive activities, such mixed devotional service is gradually transformed into pure devotional service. As the pious fruitive workers disengage themselves step by step from the bogus philosophy of enjoyment of one's hard-earned rewards, pure devotional service rewards them with complete good fortune. So it's a gradual progression. Like somebody can ask us this question that, oh, are you telling me that if I'm in an ignorant mode and if I just say Om Tat Sat before doing something in a mode of ignorance, I become transcendental? Prabhupada's disciples are clearly telling us here that it's a karma mishra bhakti. It gradually purifies us. It's gradually transformed into pure devotional service. So whatever we do, if we offer it to Krishna, whatever time, place, and wherever we are, I might be fully in ignorance, but if I offer it to Krishna, I have added another like a rung of ladder for me to move forward towards Krishna. This is 11 to 36, if somebody is keeping track. So coming back to our next verse. So that's about Om. Then
Prabhuji,
yes.
sorry. Prabhuji, where it is written that when we do our chanting completely focused with purity, with completely putting your heart into it, that vibration of that sound goes to the Goloka and it comes back to us and purifies our heart.
Where is it written?
Yeah, because I keep hearing in some of the lectures, but I wanted to exactly know, is it written in some Vedic literature or means obviously it cannot be mental speculation, but yeah, I just wanted to. Because I keep hearing that it goes, if you are doing a pure japa, it goes to the Goloka and Krishna hears us and then it comes back to us. That vibration, it purifies our heart, and that is how the Chatodarpan happens. But where exactly it is there? Is it written somewhere in the purport of Srila Prabhupada? Or,
I'm not sure. I can't remember it on top of my head. I can think
okay.
of it and come back to you. I know that I've seen this Goloka chart. If you would have seen, right? We have one in the temple.
Yes.
That shows there, right? That we are in the Bhulok and the chanting is going all the way
Going
up
on
to,
and coming, yes.
and then so that it shows. And if you get a chance this Sunday, try to go. There is a lot of references on that document.
Sure, Prabhu.
And I think I have it somewhere here also. I'll have to find it, but there's that document might have a reference to it.
Thank you so much.
But I'll also look it up. I have it somewhere with me, kind of a picture of that. I don't know what do you call it, Goloka chart, I think you call it.
Goloka chart, Prabhu.
Yeah, okay. I can find it, and probably I can also share it on the website or the group, WhatsApp group, so that we all have that. So yes, okay. So coming to Tat. Without desiring fruitive results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word Tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. So now this is talking about Tat. Right? So the word Krishna is using, anabhisandhai, without desiring fruitive results. So if you notice that in the last verse we read, there was no mention of fruitive results, because this Om, it was talking about Om. So when Om is mentioned, there is no mention of not being attached to fruits of birth. Jagya Dana Tapa is in both, but here the people who are being referred to here are moksha kankshibhi. Is that they are desirous of moksha, liberation. Right? So they are still there is some amount of desires. Right? So there's a different level. That okay, Om is the purest, then Tat is the next level. But then, as I said, don't try to get into such technicalities. Understanding that it's all Krishna, and then we progress in that perspective. Right. So this. Where's that? Prabhupada is saying, to be elevated to the spiritual position, one should not act for any material gain. Act should be performed for the ultimate gain of being transferred to the spiritual kingdom, back home, back to Godhead. Right? So there should be no desire for material gains. So Krishna is highlighting this fact that there should be no desire for fruitive results. So then you can use the word Tat in that case. Tat is about thinking of the absolute truth. So Om is a very general invocation. Tat is about thinking of the absolute truth, so slightly more focus. Right? And then lastly comes Sat. There are two verses together. The absolute truth is the objective of devotional sacrifice, and is indicated by the word Sat. The performers of such sacrifice is also called Sat, as are all works of sacrifice, penance, and charity, which, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Person, O son of Pritha. So this is about Sat, Sat Bhave. So Sat is related with being eternal. So when one is attracted to the absolute truth, when there's an attraction to the absolute truth, right? So one has that emotion, then one chants Sat. So we want to spiritualize Yajna, Dana, Tapa. So what was talked about earlier was in the three modes. Now invocation of these words, Om, Tat and Sat, the conception underlying all this will help us come to the transcendental level, right? And Krishna is saying, by being true to the absolute nature, right, are performed to please the Supreme Person. What this means is that don't get caught up in, as I was saying earlier, don't get too much caught up in the Om, what does Om Tat Sat mean? And these are important from a Vedic perspective, no doubt. But according to us, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the concept focuses not the literal recitation of the words, but it is on the essential principle and emotions associated with them. Whatever activity we are doing, it is to be connected with the absolute truth. So that's the thought we should have when we are seeing all this. And Krishna himself is saying, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme God. It has to be true to the absolute nature. So what is the truth? That the emotion should be there. That makes it of absolute truth to the absolute nature. Otherwise, just by chanting Om, the benefit will not be too much. You have to bring the emotion behind it. And Prabhupada, he explains it very nicely. He refers to this verse in the 3rd canto, which says about association of devotees. So with good association, we get knowledge. So association elevates us. Right? Yeah. The word Tad Arthiyam further means offering service to anything which represents the Supreme, including such service as cooking and helping in Lord's temple, or any other kind of work for broadcasting the glories of the Lord. The supreme words Om Tat Sat are thus used in many ways to perfect all activities and make everything complete. That's the purpose of Om Tat Sat, to make everything complete. How do we make it complete? How do we make it true to the absolute nature? By bringing the emotion in it. Right? That's what we have to understand. The last verse of the chapter, Ashraddhaya hutam dattam tapastaptam kritam chayat asat itti uchyate partha na chatat prityo na iya. Anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and the next. Krishna is giving a very strong statement here. And if you realize, the chapter started with Shraddha. Yes, Shastra Vidyam Utsarje, Yajante Shraddhainvita, Tesham Nishtatuka Krishna, Sattva Maho Rajasthan. That was Arjun's question. So he said they have some Shraddha. And where is it ending? Ashraddha. Ashraddhaya Hutam Datta. Right? So if it is without Shraddha, it is Asat Uchyate. Asat means it's temporary, impermanent. And Krishna is further saying is useless both in this life and the next. And the word he's using is Na chatat pretya na iha. So pretya is this life. Pretya means after death, and in this, and iha means this life. So pretya word is referred to the post-death stage. So after the soul leaves, soul gets a pret body, pretya deha. And so somewhere in between, it's a transition from right now we have a subtle and a gross body, and when a soul doesn't have a gross body. But then somewhere in between, we have somewhat a gross body, not like ours, but not like a completely without any gross body. And when the last rites are performed, in at least in India, in the people who practice this, there's a lot of food offered. Pindadan, they say pindadan. That food is contributed to the formation of the body in the next life. That is what our Shastras tell us. So that's how all this is connected, So faith can be in 3 modes, but goodness is the best, obviously. But then beyond goodness is also transcendent. But anything performed without Shraddha, Shraddha Hutam Dattam. Hutam means offered in sacrifice. And Dattam is charity. So Krishna is again bringing the 3 things. yajna, stana, tapas. So it becomes asat. It is temporary or false. Right? So it's neither value of now nor in the future, nor in the next life. So this concept comes again and again in Bhagavad Gita and other Shastras also. When we start the Ishopanishad, there's also a verse in the third verses also, it talks about Pritya, and then also in Bhagavad Gita also it has come. Right? So that's the destination of a person who don't have faith. So yeah, that's the concept here. And if you notice, what does faith mean? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave us a very clear definition of faith. And once again, going to the concept that how, if you see Shraddha, the word Shraddha, Prabhupada translates Shraddha in the first canto, second chapter. I think it's the 12th verse, where Prabhupada translates the word Shraddha as curiosity. But when you go to a more esoteric literature, like Chaitanya Charitamrita, what is Shraddha there? Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kahe Sudhrita Nishchay. Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Krit Hoy. That comes to the Madhya Leela. That what is Shraddha? Shraddha is firm faith that by rendering transcendental service to Krishna, I have performed all subsidiary activities. So now their faith is directly connected to Krishna, transcendental service to Krishna. So once again, as I was mentioning, there are different layers, different levels of the same word will be expressed differently according to the readers who are expected to read those books. Shraddha Shabde, Vishwas Kahe. So faith is that unshakable confidence in something transcendental, in Krishna. Krishna Bhakti Karile. And what happens by doing Krishna Bhakti? Sarv Karma Krit Hoy. All the other work is done. Just like if you read the Bhagavatam, and that's a very good example of faith, especially if you look at it from this chapter. The Brahmanas in the forest were doing yajna, and Krishna and his friends, Krishna Balaram and his friends were playing there. So Krishna tells his friends that there are some Brahmanas who are doing yajna. Why don't you go and ask them for some food? I'm very hungry. So his friends go and they tell the yajnik Brahmins that Krishna is here. He's very hungry. And the Bhagavatam explains that those Brahmanas don't even look at those Krishna's friends. Sorry, I lost you there. So I was talking about the yajnik Brahmins. I hope at least you heard me there. So the yajnik Brahmins, they even did so when Krishna sent his friends to get some food, he was hungry in the forest from the yajnik Brahmins. The yajnik Brahmins didn't even look at his friends, and they just ignored them completely. And so, but then they were doing rituals. They were doing a lot of yajna, fire sacrifices, and chanting mantras and so forth. At the same time, so the Krishna's friends, they come back, and they tell Krishna, they didn't even look at us. Where did you send us? Krishna said, okay, now you go to their wives. So yajnik Brahmins' wives. So those wives were slightly away from the yajnik, where the yajna was happening. So those Krishna's friends go there and they say, Mother, Krishna and Balaram are playing with us and they're hungry. And you'll not believe it that some of the Brahmins' wives, they actually fainted just by listening that Krishna is here. And the others, they just left everything, picked up whatever eatables were there, they ran towards Krishna. Okay? So the difference lies in, if you look at it from this chapter's perspective, you can do all these rituals, Vedic rituals, but if Krishna is not there, it's all useless. So the yajnik Brahmins, even though they were performing sacrifices, they were doing so much austerities, sitting in the middle of the forest, sitting in front of a fire, and austerities were there. But then because they didn't have that concept of Krishna in the whole process, they didn't understand that every mantra they are chanting is towards Krishna. Their activities were not of much value. But at the same time, those wives of yajnik Brahmins, how did they come to know about Krishna? They would go to the village, to the market to buy, things for the yajna. and there they would hear the glories of Krishna and Balram. Just by that, they developed so much Shraddha for Krishna and Balram that they were ready to leave their own husbands for it. So that's the difference that a Shraddha makes in the whole process. And that's the beauty of the whole process. That's a very good example to understand that how just by bringing Krishna into the picture, sarva karma krit hoy. All the other work is done, right? And also the gopis, they were the same example, right? And this level of faith is what Krishna is calling for towards the end of Bhagavad Gita. Sardharman parityaja, mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tom sarva papibhyo. Even if you feel that you have not done your duty, or some sinful reaction will come, whatever it is, I'll take care of everything. Krishna is saying, don't worry, just serve me. So this is the last verse of the chapter. Let's see Prabhupada. Yeah, and Prabhupada is saying something that we read in the purport, also in the 11th canto verse, that there's a gradual elevation happens. The moment we start bringing Krishna into the picture, the gradual elevation continues to happen. And that is what is being recommended in this chapter. Yeah, that's a good one. So by bringing Krishna into the picture, all the knowledge, as I was saying, practice plus knowledge leads to wisdom. Right? So when we practice bhakti and we bring Krishna into every activity we are doing, we will realize that, okay, now all this is in tune with my nature. Right? And we start to feel out of tune with lower vibrations. And that's a good sign. And that's called detachment. Right? You keep adding that ingredient of bhakti into everything we do, a little drop by drop. And later on, you can add more and more to it. And then it completely takes over your life. Earlier, which we are taking as a medicine now, later on in our life, that will become our food rather than a medicine. Okay, so this ends the chapter. I'm not going to begin the next chapter and start that.